In this movie, we'll talk about graphs, and here we show section 3.3 in the book talks about graphs. A little extra information here. Some of the newest features are contained in Appendix 7 that came out with version 3.7, and that's true for a lot of things. So check the appendices in back to see if there's anything new in the later updates. Page 109 is where this section starts. So anyway, check the book, section 3.3. There's a lot of good information there. So here we are on our main screen. Let's say we want to make a graph. This screen here, this graph is not meant for any detailed analysis. This is just to show you some general idea of the shape of the curve and that it looks like a reasonable power curve and such. This is a good summary, and that's about all. So if you click on graph, you got your options here, just like in reports, if you look at the report movie, of what you want to graph. And you can pick time or RPM and just a power run or all data. And if we select to do an RPM graph and select all data, you're going to see it's not going to let you do it. And that is to try and ensure that you don't get some part throttle data average in with wide open throttle data and get an erroneous looking graph. So let's do a time graph. These are very good for troubleshooting. And if you do a time graph, it's generally for troubleshooting best to put no filtering on if you want to troubleshoot to see what's going on here. And let's put in boost and air fuel 1. Let's make a graph. And there you have a graph with a lot of features turned off here. Let's turn some of these features off that are making things a little bit hard to read. We'll go over to format, line style. We'll go back to thin lines, format, grid style, standard grid, and this is making a little bit more sense for us. Now you can see here we've got 3 runs overlaid on top of each other. I clicked on history log, and we've marked 3 tests to graph in the history log, and in order to get a test to show up in the history log, you've got to open it from the main screen, or you could also get it on history log by clicking on this add test up here. And then you get a yes in the use column there. For example, we got 3 tests being graphed here. I'm going to turn one of them off. And now you can see we just got 2 tests. Here we got our air fuel. Our torque you can see is fairly jumpy, but as soon as I put some filtering on it, it gets knocked down quite a bit. Very easy to read. Boost here is manifold vacuum because this is not a supercharged engine. That's why everything is below 0. And you can see when they close the throttle, the boost goes to a very low negative or fairly low negative number. 7 inches and 5 inches of vacuum, which is approximately where it is at the beginning also. If you completely close the throttle, it would go to a much higher negative boost number. So one feature we put in the graph options here is this one button down here, load the standard settings for torque and horsepower graphs. You click on that, and on the settings up here, you get set to what most people would want to use for looking at torque and horsepower graphs. And here we got the 2 tests, run 14 and run 13 overlaid. We can go into history log and turn on run 12 again. Now we have 3 tests overlaid. Now one way you could just graph the current test is just click on single test here. Or you could also go into the history log, click on these to turn them off, and turn it off that way. Now what a lot of people are going to want to do, I'm going to turn this on to make a more interesting graph here, is you're going to want to print this. And what you can do here is you can first, Windows print option, we're going to print to Adobe Acrobat Distiller, so whatever we print will show up on the screen so you can see it. Landscape or portrait, other things here. But the big thing for me is, and if you haven't, you want to check this. Make sure you got some kind of printer assigned here. Because if you haven't assigned anything, this might be a reason your computer will not print or your program won't print. So what we can do is we can either print black and white here, where different colors are going to be represented by different dashed line styles, or print solid colors here, print in color. And that's what I'm going to select to do here. And there it comes up. You're seeing this screen because I'm going to Acrobat Distiller. Won't let me do it because I've already got that opened. I have to turn off my Acrobat Distiller here. But anyway, this is what, well, that was a test with bold lines there. But let me do this again. And now it'll let me print it. And here's what it would look like in Acrobat Distiller. And you can see we got some other stuff information down here that we can assign with some of these format commands, like edit the printed comments and data output. Here what we can do is we can put in a graph comment here. We can add something to the test comments here of the 3 tests that we might want to work with. And you can see as we click on these buttons here, it shows what their titles are over here. And let's say we want to include a test comment on the first one. The first one we want to say, maybe we want to say baseline. Okay, this comment down here, we get 1 comment for the entire graph. These comments, we're going to get these are going to be assigned to each one, to each of the separate tests that you'll see. And maybe want to include the test summaries, alternate titles. I'll show you that in a second. Maybe you don't like the titles that are being produced over here. A way to change that is edit the titles in the legend, okay? For example, the standard title for this test is 502M12, number 1. But we've typed in 780 Holly, and maybe you want to add that to it. Okay. Now we got 4-barrel. It doesn't show up here because we haven't said use it yet. And maybe this one here, this one, 13, we want to put that in there. And now you can see 850 and 780 Holly 4-barrel. And this would be useful if you're trying to do a nice printout, a nice graph for a certain customer to show, you know, before and after modifications or whatever. And again, we click on File. I'm going to print black and white this time. You can see the different dashed line styles come up. Yep. We don't have Acrobat open, so I'm just going to save it. And you can see when it's done printing, Acrobat's going to pop up here. And now we have these labels there. And down in here we have our summaries, mod 2 included, mod 1, and it's got the engine number, the customer and stuff here. So you can get nice printouts for comparison. And here's where the graph goes here, the graph comment comparison of 3 runs. So you get a lot of different options for printing and graphing. Another option you have in the Pro version is you can go into Preferences and Printing, and you can turn on Use a Logo File. And here you also have some options here. Maybe you want your company name in here. Maybe you want something like that. This will always show up on printouts, and maybe you want to use a logo file. To use a logo file, you'll turn it on, then browse, and find a logo file. This is something you'd have to have created. Maybe you've had an art department do something for you or whatever, or you've just taken a camera and taken a picture of something. But I've picked out one of our trademarks here. Click on OK. And you go into Graph, make your graph, do your print, and here you see your printout, and now you got a little logo in the upper left corner. So there are a lot of options there that let you customize your printouts, and for doing graphs to make professional printouts for your customers.